haven't posted any videos for a while, so I thought I'd just post this one as a quick update. I have been working on some videos and some other projects and haven't had any time to upload any of these videos. So as I say, I thought I'd just give a quick update for anyone that was interested. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I've been working on a PDP-8 that needed repair and restoration. And I was working my way through the boards and I got as far as the memory cards. This is one of them, so this is the core memory card out of the PDP. And unfortunately the memory system does have some issues. I suspected it might because of the nature of the failure of the power supply. But rather than just going through and posting a repair video on that, I thought I'd take a bit of a detour and just mention something else that I've been working on. For about a year now I've been working on a book that is specifically targeted at magnetic core memory. And if you're not familiar with core memory, that's the type of memory fitted to the PDP, and it consists of thousands or tens of thousands of tiny magnetic cores. To give you some idea of the scale of these, I've got one in my hand here. I don't know if you're able to see it. It's down here. Now this is quite a large one. It's much larger than the ones that are normally used. And the book I'm writing, which will be available in a few months, is all about developing a core memory system, how to go about it, a practical way of doing it. And what we're looking at on the bench here is some of the testing that I'm doing to post a series of videos. So I will be posting an entire series of videos on core memory once the book is available. And essentially, I know there are some small core memory kits around, but I wanted one that was more specific to TTL type design. So rather than having a modern microcontroller driving a few cores, I wanted one that was driven entirely as it would have been back in the day when they were used. And also I wanted a core that was big enough to actually be able to be used within a microprocessor system. So the core that I've designed is a 64-byte core, and this is the array card. So I will be making these available as a kit as well, not assembled. You will have to assemble it yourself, but I will be showing some videos on how to assemble these, and it is detailed in the book as well. But being 64-byte, that's 512 bits, it is a bit of a challenge, but it is a very interesting project. And if you are interested in vintage electronics and specifically in computing, then this is something that really is the key to all modern microprocessor systems when memory first started to be developed. And as I say, I'll be posting an entire series of videos, but just to give you a taste of the sorts of things that will be in that series, what we're looking at here is some of the basic electronics for driving the core, and these are designed from scratch specifically for this. And as I say, the book does go into some detail. I will go into some detail in the video series, not as much as what is in the book, of course, but to give you some idea as to what we're looking at here, I've got one of these cores on this piece of wire, but we can't see it. It's just where the tip of the screwdriver is. So I've got one core, and it's on this silver wire. So that's 0.5mm copper wire, and then again you probably can't see it, there's a much finer wire also passed through the core. And then the electronics we have here is a driver, sense, inhibit, latch and amplifier for talking to this one core. And as I say, I wanted to give some feel as to what we'll be looking at in the series. So on the scope, what we're looking at, the top trace is the pulse we'll be putting in to drive the selection wires. So that's the big thick wire you can see passing through the core. The bottom yellow trace is the sense line output, so that's the raw output from the sense line. And to give you an idea of the scale, this is set to 50 millivolts per division, so it's very small signals we get out of this. I will be going through the fundamentals, the principles of core memory, how the ferrite cores themselves behave and operate. But in this video I'm just going to give a very brief demonstration of this particular circuit. So we've got everything in this circuit we need to drive a single core, and what I'm going to do now is trigger the scope, and at the moment the core is what we might deem to be erased, and whether it's erased or programmed depends on how you define the meaning of those two terms within your system. But again, I'll expand on that later, or at least in the video series. So if I arm the scope, I'll trigger the memory system, and you can see the bottom trace, although there's a slight hump there, there is no real signal, and that is just cross-coupling between the two wires passing through the core. What I'll do now is just program a 1 into the core. So I'm just going to quickly put a pulse. So I put a pulse through the core the other way, and so the core is now programmed with a 1. And if we now do another read, so I'll trigger the system again, we can see that the system has indeed responded with a 1, which is what the green and the blue traces are. We can see the yellow trace, there's now a hump, which is it's actually the output from the ferrite core. So that's created when the core flips magnetization state, and that's what the amplifier and electronics and the latch detects. So the blue trace is actually the output from the latch, and as you can see, it's giving an output of 1. So this has indeed given us a 1. One of the complications in designing a core memory system is that reads are destructive. So if I just do another read of the same core, notice that we no longer have any data in it, and if I keep reading it, you'll see we'll get the same thing every time. So there's now no data stored in that core. But if I write a 1 back into it, we do another read, we can see that again we have successfully read a 1 from the core. And as I say, the complication with a system like this is every time you read the cores you erase them, so you then have to write back the value you've just read. And when you're talking about a large number of cores, obviously it gets increasingly complicated, but the book explains all this in a lot of detail, and I will go into quite a lot of detail in the series of videos that I've got planned. Currently recording them, that's why this is here. And following on from that, I obviously have to then repair the PDP-8, which I'm still working on, but I wanted to show this series first because there will be some fairly in-depth fault finding on the PDP-8 memory system, and it will make it far easier to explain what we're looking at once we've gone through the series and I've explained in a lot of detail how core memory works. It should also be very interesting, as I say, if you are interested in vintage computer systems, then knowing about core memory really is a must. It's one of the things that was fundamental to the development of these older systems, right up to the introduction of solid-state memory. It's also fascinating in terms of the number of aspects of electronics that it spans as well. There's a whole range of different disciplines that you need to know about for a full understanding of core memory. So anything in particular you think you might want to see in this series, then please leave a comment, but I intend to go right through from the fundamentals of the ferrite material, how to properly drive the ferrite cores, how to detect the signal output from them, and then how to translate that into a core memory design. I also have some videos coming up on the MDS systems. I've been discussing with another YouTuber about some software he's designed for it and some tests, and that should be quite interesting if you are interested in the MDS systems. And I'll put a link into his channel when I do that, so you'll be able to go and see what he's up to. And from that point on, I've got quite a few repair projects coming up, so got a lot planned for this year, and hopefully you'll find it interesting.